So I thought I would use this opportunity of the cold weather to tell you about the time that I almost froze to death in the polar vortex of 2013, 2014. Remember that? That was fun. So grab your popcorn. 2013, the end of 2013, was a mild winter in Northwest Ohio. It was starting off very mild. We hadn't even had a freeze yet. And I was driving a semi for a company, and I had to go, I want to say I was coming back from like Missouri. And I knew the weather was getting bad. I could tell you it was probably a Friday night, and the weather was getting bad. And about the time I hit central Illinois, it started really getting bad, and the snow started. And I was basically getting snowed on the whole way back. Now, a seasoned veteran driver, no problem for me. Just slow it down a little bit and keep it in the lines and everything's fine. And the closer I got, I started pulling in looking for fuel, because I don't like letting we're going to talk about diesel fuel in a minute. I don't like letting the diesel fuel tanks, when the temperature is going to be really cold, I don't like getting them, below half tank, period. So, but sometimes you have to, and it depends on how much your load weighs and all the other good stuff. You got to factor that in. So, point being is, we're just giving her a little extra rip'ems right now this morning to try and make sure that I got the RPMs up, and she was idling for a minute. We'll blow everything out of there, get the charging system going. So, anywho, so coming back, I got all the way across Indiana, and for whatever reason, I was coming across on 30. The point is, the story doesn't get good until I hit the Indiana-Ohio line. And they had just put in and opened up the year before this brand new stretch of road called 24, the Fort to Port project. It was 4 lanes, beautiful road, all brand new, looked like glass. But by the time I hit the Ohio line, I should back up a little bit. I was in Indiana, and I hit a fuel stop, and 2 snowplows from Indiana were parked having a donut meeting between the building and the fuel pumps. And I said, "Hey fellas, what's going on?" They said, "Well, all the roads are shut down, drivers." And I said, "No kidding." They said, "Yeah." And the problem was, there was no place to park. All the truck parking was gone. And basically, in good weather, at that point, I was an hour and 15 minutes from home. And that is what we call being mission driven. So that's the first reason I'm telling you this story. It does the same thing will apply to a motorcycle. If you get mission driven, you have to go do something. You're asking for trouble. As I'm heading back from Indiana, because I had to, I didn't have any place to park. I was at a diesel pump, and you can't park at the diesel pumps. So, and I thought, it's not that bad. At that point, I would say there was probably 2 to 3 inches of snow, and there was big ruts in places where they had plowed, but the snow was still coming down. So I get over to the Ohio line on 24, and right around the 3-mile marker, where there's a big truck stop now, there was a nothing. There was a whole lot of nothing out there. So a pretty desolate area, and just before the 3-mile marker, I had seen a set of headlights way back behind me. Now at this point, we're not in 3 inches of snow anymore. We're more like 4 or 5 inches of snow. And the fastest I can go safely is about 30 miles an hour. Just above 30 miles an hour, my tires are starting to spin. And I had what's called super singles on, a Freightliner Coronado with about 1 million miles on it. And there was no going over 30 at that point, and 30 was too fast. So I had slowed it down to about 25. Now here's the problem. As a truck driver with a lot of experience, you see a set of headlights, and then you see in your mirror, and then you see chicken lights and clearance lights, and you go, "Oh, damn it, it's a super trucker." And here he comes. He's loaded down. He's driving a Pete, probably big 379, and he's got his toenail in the injector going on it, just getting on it. and he's out in the left lane. Not that he would know where the left lane is, because there is no marked left lane. It's snow. Like, as far as you can see, 4 to 5 inches of snow probably going across both lanes. So as he is approaching, as we're getting closer to that 3-mile marker, heading east, he gets up next to me, and this cold, snowy snow is blowing. It's not wet snow. It's not heavy wet snow where it just sticks there. This is blowing snow. Now, the good part about that is it has a tendency of clearing off the road pretty quick, but when it gets that deep, it's not clearing off the road that quick. And the road temperatures were actually pretty warm before the snow happened, because we hadn't had a big freeze yet. So that becomes important in a minute. As the truck got closer to me in the left lane, I could see, I'm going to get white. It's going to be a whiteout. I'm not going to be able to see through my windshield. So I start backing off of it really quick. I get off of the throttle. Not too fast, but I'd start letting off of the throttle. And as he's coming up to me, he gets nervous and he slows down. Well, this is real dumb and real bad, and I'll tell you why. It was a bad idea to try and pass in the first place. The second place was he's waiting me out. As he gets up, as his truck gets up in front of my window, he's waiting me out. I can't see the road. I can't see anything past the hood of my truck except the lights on the side of his cab. And I'm basically kind of creeping over to the right a little bit because he's going to hit my window. Now, any driver worth their salt that's old will tell you, let him hit the window. Let him hit the mirror. Screw it. Let him hit it. But I had a lot of pride I hadn't swallowed yet. Because if he hits it, it's his fault. Now, remember what I told you about avoiding the accident. Well, you can go too far in avoiding the accident. That's exactly what happened. He pushed me so far over to the right as his trailer was coming over, and he's going passing me. He went from passing me at a reasonable speed to he went, oh, this is dangerous. Maybe I shouldn't pass that fast. He slows down. Now he's wiped me out. So I can't see anything. I can't slam on the brakes. I don't want to stop in this stuff. That's for sure, right? So I say, okay. Let's see what happens. I'm going to keep going to the right, and I'm laying on a horn, and I'm backing off of it. And all this happens in a fairly quick amount of time. But essentially what we got to was he had whited me out so bad, and I got so far over to the right as he was getting clear of me that my steer tire on the passenger side, that's the front passenger side tire, dropped off of this freshly made concrete road that is now US 24, and there was gravel next to it, and there was mud under the gravel, and it had not frozen yet. So even though we had all these snowy conditions, like we were in the midst of this big winter storm that's just starting, the ground wasn't frozen, and my tire sank through the gravel right into the mud, and I couldn't get the damn thing back up on the road. I had basically one tire keeping me from getting all the way to the house. I had not ever really been stuck like that before. I was pretty irritated about the whole thing. And by the way, at this point, I'm 20 miles from my house. So, but the truck's sitting there, the load's sitting there, I'm sitting there. I call the boss, or I send the boss a message, and the boss shoots me back a text, says, got the wrecker on the way, no problem. Okay, well, he says a little bit later, this is about 8 o'clock at night, and he says a little bit later, hey, wrecker's got some, he's doing some work, he'll get to you as soon as he can. He says, just sit tight, he knows where you're at. He already went by earlier and saw me there with the four-ways on. So he said when he gets done with this other stuff, he'll be right back. He's got a couple of vehicles that they're not running. So he said, you're okay with that? I said, sure, no problem. I had no idea what I was in for. So a little while later, I get another message, and it says, hey, he's really working. You're good, right? Engine's running? Yep, engine's running. Okay, now we got to stop and talk about diesel fuel. I know. If you're privy to it, you know what happens when the temperatures get really cold. Sub-zero temperatures, sub-freezing temperatures, but especially sub-zero temperatures in a diesel truck. Diesel fuel, even treated, will start to gel, which means it's no longer a liquid anymore, and it has a hard time getting pumped through the system. So these trucks have back in the olden times, they used to, and even today probably, they used to put kerosene, mix kerosene with it because it would, they do that with jet fuel, as a matter of fact. Well, look it up, it's true. It'll lower the freezing temperature so you can, pump it around a little bit more. And this truck, and a lot of trucks out there, have a fuel system. So what it'll do is it will pump the fuel to the fuel rails to get them into the injectors so that it can be sprayed into the cylinder, which in this case on a diesel, there's no spark plug, so it's compression, combustion, and that heats up the fuel that's in that rail because it's going towards the engine where it's nice and warm, and then it has a return system that returns it back to a diesel tank. So what happens is you're dumping warm fuel into the diesel tank, which keeps it from gelling as quick. So it's got to get pretty cold, and it works. It's a pretty reliable system. But there's one drawback to it, and on this truck it only had a pickup on one diesel tank. And it was the left one. So that's this side. And the truck was like this. See where we're going with this? It's picking up diesel from the right tank on the passenger side, and it's sending it out to the engine where it's getting warmed up. Great. But then it's bringing it back and dumping it in the driver's side fuel tank, and there's no crossover line. You can't get fuel from the right tank to the left tank unless it goes through the engine, and it's going that way. So even though I had almost half a tank in the right tank, a third of a tank probably, which was too low, I couldn't get fuel anywhere. That fuel stop that I went to didn't have any fuel. Their pumps were down, so they couldn't pump any fuel. And I had enough to get back, but I hadn't planned for the idea that I might starve my engine of fuel with fuel in the tank. That's something that happens with airplanes because you have fuel selector valves. Doesn't happen in trucks, really, unless you're in this situation. So basically, unbeknownst to me, I have no idea at the time, I'm idling away. I have what's called a tri-pack on the truck. It's basically supposed to keep the batteries charged, and it's supposed to keep you nice and toasty in the winter and nice and cool in the summer. The tri-pack is also sucking fuel. It did later. So basically what happened was I'm sitting there, and it's getting cold. I mean cold. And the engine's just died. I said, well, that's not good. I said, I got fuel. Maybe it gelled up, I don't know. Maybe that system's not working. Maybe it's maybe something weird's going on there. So I turned on the tri-pack, and the tri-pack ran, and it was keeping the temperature inside of the cabin. I couldn't tell you what the temperature was outside. I know when all this started, it was around 30 degrees, so it was cold, but it wasn't cold. But that temperature was going to go from 30 down into the negatives, and we're talking about an actual temperature of negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit that night. I had no idea. I knew it was supposed to get cold, but, I wasn't really paying attention. There's another red flag. Pay attention, man. Pay attention. So, I take the, I should have taken the opportunity about 2 o'clock in the morning. Now remember, this happened about 8 o'clock at night. About 2 o'clock in the morning, a state trooper comes by and pounds on the cab and says, hey driver, are you good? And I said, yep, the wrecker's on the way. That was the last thing I heard. He should be finishing up a job, and then he's going to come and get me out. I'm going to get the truck back to the shop. I said, but it's, he was just going to come and pull me out. He's probably going to have to take me back now because my engine died. And he said, well, you're okay with the temperature dropping? And I said, yeah, I got a tri-pack. It's running. It's going to be fine. Oh, man. So that was around between 2 and 3 a.m. And I would say less than 30 minutes after he said, because he told me, he said, look, he said, everything's closed down. Nobody's out here. And he goes, and we're not going to be out here because we got a lot of ground to cover where we can travel, and it's getting to the point where we can't even drive down this. So are you sure? I said, I'm good. He said, okay. That's 3. Pride cometh before the fall. Remember that. I was proud of my truck. I was proud of my survival abilities. By God, came from Wisconsin. I'm not afraid of a little snow. Pish. Well, I should have took him up on it because less than 30 minutes, I would say, after he left, that tri-pack just quit working. At first, it just wasn't putting out any heat. Like, I'd have my toes right in front of the the tri-pack vent, there's no heat at all. It's just blowing like cool air. I'm like, that's not good. And we don't have an engine. The tri-pack's not putting out heat. And a little bit after that, the tri-pack quit running, just died. So now I have no heat source. The temperature outside is dropping rapidly. It's already down to like 0 or close to 0. So, oof, what now? Better start, I sent a macro to the company, and basically the macro said, hey, nobody's been here yet. I don't have any power. So what I should have done was charged up my cell phone really good, but I didn't. I didn't have much power, and it seemed like it was draining it faster. I couldn't get a hold of anybody on the phone, so I just sent them that macro that said, hey, I need you guys to get on something quick because my engine is done. It's not running. The tri-pack is no longer running. I have no heat. I have no electricity. The batteries are dying rapidly. So at this point, I'm kind of on my own. And let me tell you something, being so close to, I've been in some sticky stuff and out in desolate places before, but that was the first time where the little wheel in my head kind of made a full rotation and said, my God, you flat-footed past every good opportunity to get out of this mess, and you might die on the side of the road. So I'm thinking, okay, survival mode. Let's kick this into gear because this isn't going to work. I'd already kind of got some layers on, and I used to unload my own truck for extra money. That's another thing for video, but basically that's where this thing came in. I always had this in my truck. So I had this. I had a change of clothes because I was usually not gone for very long. I was gone for a day or two. I had a change of clothes. I had this. I had a couple of pairs of socks. I always keep dry socks. Ibuprofen and dry socks. You'll be all right forever. That's not true. So I grabbed my extra socks and I put those on, and I grabbed my boot, only to realize, oh yeah, this is the one that has the hole in it. I don't have a pair of boots that don't have holes in them at this point, so that's not good. Grabbed the duct tape. Well, it was kind of effective, and I had a beanie, the stocking hat on, and then I had a big wool, like one of those Russian things they used to sell in the truck stop. I had that on. I had gloves on. I had everything I could find, and every blanket that was in that truck was wrapped around me, and I wound up with a crock pot. So there's a couple of things that happened that I'm gonna go ahead and leave out of the story, because it's kind of gross. However, keep in mind, by 9 o'clock the next morning, I hadn't seen a restroom in 13 hours. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, and you're right. It was way past my morning constitutional time. The guts started rumbling, so I'm gonna tell you about it, but I'm gonna censor it. You're not gonna get out in a foot of snow at 10 below 0 with the wind whipping, or 50. At this point, 20 below. It was 20 below that day, early in the morning. And the wind chill factor was negative 60. Like I said, these were record-setting temperatures. You can go back and look them up. I got no reason to BS you. That's what happened. My contacts, I used saline. My contact solution was frozen. I didn't have any fresh water. I had one half of a quarter of a bottle that had been kind of sitting on to keep it from freezing. Everything in the truck was completely frozen, and I had to go. It was happening. So there's a process. We're not going to go into it, but basically, for professional campers that know, you can do the thing. I hadn't done it for a long time, and I really haven't done it since. I don't drive anymore, so I'll never have to. But it involves oatmeal and a bowl and a bag, a couple of them, and paper towels and all kinds of stuff. And of course, that requires you to, take a lot of these layers off. So I got the job done. And like a moron, I mean a complete moron, I'm like, I'm not well. Nobody wants to sit with a bag of their own, matter a foot and a half away from them. So obviously I want to get this out of the truck. And I am not a litter bug. However, desperate times call for desperate measures. So I figured I'm going to pitch this sucker as far into that ditch as I possibly can. And without putting anything else on, except for the base layer that I had on, I popped the door open, and driver's side door, because the passenger side door was frozen shut. That's another red flag. And I walked very quickly to the front bumper, and I gave this sucker a huge, spin and check, like gave it the old, mace throw, and it took off into the ditch, and I went back over and grabbed the door handle on the truck, and access denied. Immediate access denied. I said, you gotta be kidding me. And the wind is blowing. I'm going to have to break a window, and once I break a window, it's going to get even colder in this damn truck. So I started just rattling on that door, and it jerked open. I was climbing up because I was going to bust it with my elbow and climb in and see if I could find some cardboard or something to put in front of it. And the door popped open at the, what I say. It was a close one, you know what I mean? So I get back in the truck, and now my core is cold because I was out there for about, 6 minutes maybe, and it was bad. So remember, got a hole in my shoe. I hadn't put gloves on because, I was just basically wearing a base layer, but my temperature dropped, and it dropped pretty quick. So I got to get all this stuff back on. I got to start warming up, and the only thing that I've got left in my truck that can produce any heat is a crock pot. I had a small crock pot that I was doing a carb thing back then, and I'd lost a reasonable amount of weight, and I got this crock pot stuffed in my lap. I got all the blankets on me. I got everything, including this thing, on my truck, and my temperature is dropping. I'm having a hard time keeping heat. Again, 20 below actual temp. So and no source of heat. I can't walk to go get a source of heat. The only thing I got is this crock pot, and it isn't putting out diddly squat. It's just barely warm to the touch, and the batteries in the truck are dying. So I'm like, okay, what's the next plan? Because I'm a survivor, by God. I'm not gonna die on the side of the road. I'm gonna keep trying stuff, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got a lot. I've got food. I've got some water, but it's frozen at this point. So what am I gonna do? Well, the snow is deep enough now. I can make a dugout next to the truck. Just hear me out. There's a reason why. I can't set a fire in the truck. I will if I have to, but if I set a fire in the truck, it's not going to be controllable. I'm going to burn the whole truck up. That's not going to do me any good. It will get somebody's attention, though, which that thought crossed my mind. So anyway, long story short, too late. I'm thinking, well, it's too far to get to the wood line. I mean, it was a half mile. There's no way I was going to make it in that deep snow, because by now the snow is deep. 8 inches. I'm sure deeper than that going across the ditch just to get to it. The closest wood line is probably not manageable at this point. I'm too cold, and I can't keep the snow out of my boots, so not going to be able to do much there. Now, I do have some stuff in the truck that I can burn, which I should be able to make a dugout in the snow, basically pile the snow up, and make a fire right in the middle of it, and that'll hopefully keep the wind off of me if I bake it deep enough and pile the snow high enough. And I can set a fire pretty close to the truck, which will block the wind, or block a lot of the wind where it was at. And then I can deal with the ramifications later. Maybe somebody will see the smoke from the fire and put 2 and 2 together and come get me, or maybe I'll see a passing snowmobile. So I start looking for something to dig with, and I mean, I'm shivering cold. So that when you're shivering cold and you don't have a heat access, this is a problem. Your body is starting to you've lost enough temperature that your body is starting to react and is trying to warm you back up. And the longer you're shivering and you can't find a heat source to get yourself warm, or you can't change your environment, the closer you're getting to hypothermic, issues. You're going, you're an overweightish truck driver that smokes a pack a day. You're looking at cardiac arrest in not too long, and I know it. So I'm thinking I got to do something. And just about as I'm pulling a shovel, I got a little folding shovel that I kept on my underneath my bunk, and I had some survival stuff in there. And as I'm pulling that shovel out to go start digging that ditch, I hear you know, a diesel engine coming up next to the truck, and I'm like, oh, thank God, because there wasn't any traffic after that cop. I mean, nothing, nobody out there, no pickup trucks, no hillbilly boys out there playing in the snow, nobody with a plow on the front of it. The county hadn't been by. There was nothing. It was shut down, and I hadn't seen anything. So it was the guy from the wrecker service at some point. Anyway, he shows up, and I've never been so happy to see a Kenworth in my life. I'm like, can I get in your, yeah, get in the cab, driver, damn. And he had this really good pair of gloves, and he let me wear them, and I was like, and it took him a while. I mean, he had all kinds of problems all night. This guy hadn't slept in them. You know, he was in rough shape. I was in rough shape. I was in bad shape. I didn't know how bad a shape I was actually in, but I knew it wasn't great. So I wound up with frostbite on the top of my noggin. I wound up with frostbite on 2 of my right toes. I wound up with frostbite on my wrist. Figure that one out. And not to mention my core temperature was dropping. So I had to warm up. And the truck was a popsicle. They had to tow it back. 2 days later, I was back out there like nothing even happened. So as a matter of fact, I didn't even get 2 days. They had put the truck in the shop and said, you know, it's warm, it's toasty, everything's fixed, blah, blah, blah. I said, what about that damn tri-pack? I don't want to die. And they said, nah, tri-pack's fine. Tri-pack wasn't fine, didn't work after that. So the point of my story, I guess, is this. I think wisdom is the prism that we look through as we age. When we age and we don't die, even the thickest among us are granted this little bit of wisdom. You know, we've seen what can happen, and we don't want to repeat it. So we start to do things that seem a little stringent, a little radical, a little, no, I am absolutely not going to do that, and you can't make me. And I think the reason why is because we've been in situations before where things went horrible. And I would say that this was the top 10 situations in my life where it was probably one of the closest where death was imminent, and I knew it. I was fully aware of it, and I was trying to do everything I could to stave it off. I should also mention that the cell phone was dead. The screen had gone totally black on it, and you couldn't do anything with it. We have a Qualcomm system in that truck where you can send messages to the company. That was dead. Wouldn't do jack squat. I had no means of communication. Even though I was only 20 miles from my house, I was basically out in the middle of nowhere. There was no place that I could get to. There were no farmhouses. There were no sheds. There was nothing that was a sign of life. It was open fields, a blowing wind. So, and at that point, you're not going to make it very far if you got to hoof it and you don't have the right gear. And I did not have the right gear. So, I learned a big lesson, and when that gave me that little prism of, wisdom to look through when I'm out and about. I can say, hey, I'm not going to do these things because I know this could happen. Is it likely? No, probably not, but it wasn't likely that day. Had I gotten loaded a little bit earlier, had I been a little bit further from that Peterbilt, had I waited another 5 minutes at the truck stop, that Peterbilt would have been ahead of me. So, and by the way, to the guy driving a Peterbilt, screw you. I hope all your babies are born naked and covered with goo, you jerk. You almost killed me. Just slow down. What are you in a big hurry for? This is what happened to me. So don't tell me. That's where that, I say it a lot, and I mean it. Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. I know better. That's happened. I've seen it. I've done it. So I make sure that I'm prepared and I'm thinking about these things because, again, something can always happen. And unfortunately, there's a lot of morgue slabs with people on them that are very surprised. Well, they would be if they could be, because nothing was going to happen that day. And yet, there they are. And a lot of boxes and a lot of cemeteries filled with the same kind of people. They just really got surprised one day. So try not to get surprised. We mitigate. That's where that word, I use that word mitigate a lot, and that's exactly what I mean. We have to mitigate the circumstances. We need to know as much as we can know about the environment, about the things that we're doing, so that we can save our own skin if we need to. or save somebody else's skin. I don't know if I'm going to put everything on the same video. So just in case I don't put it all on the same video, I'll say I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you liked the story. And if you did enjoy it and you want to see more stellar award-winning content like this, make sure you hit the like button, because that puts me up in YouTube's algorithm so that more people get to enjoy the dulcimer golden tones of my voice. And also, if you would, subscribe so you can get all the stuff. And if you ring the bell, your phone will even tell you when I drop new stuff. Isn't that wonderful? It's like an alarm. It's great. So, okay, having said all that, if this is the case, I will see you guys in the next video, and I hope you enjoyed it. So.